Good afternoon, everyone. Doesn't the mainstream media feel a little bit repetitive? Doesn't it feel like the mainstream media recycles the same storylines to fulfill the same repetitive agenda? Doesn't it feel like the mainstream media is constantly using emotions and deceit to coerce its target audience into actions that they wouldn't normally follow? Doesn't it feel like the mainstream media is always trying to program the public into supporting wars and acts of violence that aren't in real people's best interests? The people will believe what the media tells them they believe. George Orwell. Remember in 2003 when all of the Western mainstream media institutions declared that Saddam Hussein of Iraq had weapons of mass destruction? This fear indoctrination propaganda successfully programmed the Western public into supporting a war that they wouldn't have otherwise supported. And it wasn't until after the invasion that the truth came out, that there were no weapons of mass destruction. It was all one big lie. Oops. And now we have the same situation repeating itself all over again in Syria in 2017. All of the Western mainstream media institutions are accusing President Assad of using chemical weapons against his own people. So it must be true, right? Because all of the Western mainstream media institutions have never lied at the same time before to force a geopolitical agenda before, have they? No, surely not. It's for this reason that I can never trust what the Western mainstream media say, ever. After just a quarter of a century, I already feel as if I have been exposed to the same cyclical lies again and again and again. I really can't take much more. Every 4 or 5 years, people are told that their vote counts, that politicians will make a difference, or promote change, or act significantly. Then all that they end up doing is reading the script that has been handed to them by the bankers, the central bankers, that is. They prop up the same debt-based fiat currency money system, so no wonder that inequality always worsens. They enact another war upon a resource-rich developing country, so no surprise that violence continues. They claim to fight terrorism, so of course these terror attacks continue. Even when you look into these supposed terrorist attacks, the storyline is always the same. Almost every time, an angry Muslim man decides to go on a rampage shouting Allahu Akbar and death to Christians, only to be abruptly shot dead by police. So no testimony is ever available from the accused. This means that they are either an expendable patsy involved in a real false flag, or an intelligence agency operative involved in a staged hoax. All that would ever be necessary to prove that these so-called events happened as described would be to provide CCTV, obviously. Yet there is never any CCTV available. Not from the Pentagon on 9/11, not from London on 7/7, not from Sandy Hook in 2012, not from Boston in 2013, not from Paris in 2015, not from Brussels, Nice or Orlando in 2016, not from Istanbul or Ankara either, and certainly not from Westminster or Kuala Lumpur in 2017. Are you starting to see the picture now? There is never any CCTV available. So why is that? If these events occurred as the mainstream media describes them, then why are the public not allowed to see the CCTV footage that they pay for with their taxes? English people often complain about how their country is the most heavily monitored place on earth. So it follows that Westminster is likely to be the most heavily monitored place in England. Yet when a supposed terrorist attack occurs, there is no CCTV evidence available whatsoever. It's been over 2 weeks now, and there's still no CCTV available. Just some blurry and shaky footage taken from a mile away. Right. Isn't that a little suspicious? Where is the CCTV? The most heavily watched place on earth, yet there is no decent footage. Right. People often get all upset, irrational, and emotional over these events and search for potential motives and political conjecture before looking at the presence of or absence of physical evidence. But ultimately, where is the solid physical evidence? Nowhere. Therefore, it's sensible to be skeptical until physical evidence is prevented. Don't blindly believe as many do. CCTV is used to monitor, and ironically, whether this event was as the mainstream media described, a false flag, or a hoax, one thing for sure is that it will be used to justify even more monitoring of the civilian population. But even more ironically, that monitoring equipment is never available for civilians to watch themselves. This is just beyond ridiculous. Why is it always a lonely, angry Muslim man? Ask yourself this question. Even if this is true, and the attackers always happen to be Muslim, isn't there still a strange bias in the Western mainstream media that attempts to vilify the Muslim world in general? It seems like there is an agenda at play to defile the face of Islam, if you ask me. And it has become extremely repetitive. The recent accusation that President Assad of Syria has attacked his own citizens with chemical weapons for no apparent reason is no different. So why is that?